Messi. Messi. Oh my goodness. Balotelli. Aguero. That is extraordinary. What a head, son. What a head.
Back of the net.
It's that time of a week again. It's not a pundit. My name is Killian Ginnity, and I'm delighted to be joined as ever by the gruesome twosome that is Conor Glennon and Nathan Byrne. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Well, we've got a red card for Anthony Gordon that I'm sure we'll get on to later that has me all sorts of annoyed. It's not great, but I'm doing all right. And I have a feeling our red friend ain't feeling much better after that FA Cup weekend. Nate, how you going?
I'm feeling great, actually. I'm used to this now, so it's another week in paradise. All good. How are you, Gillian?
I'm great. I'm certainly better than Man United because, Nate, results aside, it's another week, another bit of journalistic fodder that Ratcliffe has given to the tabloids. We were seeing bits on social where people are saying, "Oh yeah, that players are gonna have to wash their kits and everything," and Amarin's delighted that he's not got to the later parts of the competitions because now he doesn't have extra kits to wash. What's gone on?
Be honest with you. Do you actually believe that report that came out?
I want to desperately.
One of the kind of things that, like, it would make my heart so happy.
Manchester United players are, just for the listeners who don't know, Manchester United players are reportedly washing their own kits, because we're so money strapped at Old Trafford. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like when we're doing so bad, they need to write about something, and we've reached the rabbit hole where they're now reporting that a club worth $6 billion is cleaning their own kits every week.
It is funny though that we're now at a point where, like, that Sky Sports parody account, like, I'm struggling to tell what's real and what's not at this point.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like it's when you can't feed staff or anything, like for 30 years before you could, like before you've ever had all of the money, like yeah.
One of the big surprises for me on the money one, just, I know we touched on this in previous weeks, but I was very surprised to see Gary Neville come out and say that maybe Radcliffe's right. Like, it's in how he handled it, it's very poor, but in terms of the actual volume of jobs, when you do, like, look, I don't know the day-to-day of these people's roles, but when it's 1,000 or 1,200 people, it does seem a bit overkill to me. I was just surprised that Gary Neville was critical of sorry, not critical, it was kind of in line with Radcliffe's thinking.
See, that's the bit that annoys me, is because if it was the Glazers signing off on these decisions, Gary Neville would be foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
So he would. And I don't think Radcliffe is generally wrong if there's fat that needs to be cut off the bacon, cut off the fat. But it's the ridiculousness of, like, once Jim says it's okay, well then I think it's okay. But if them dirty Americans do it,
is Neville still in that working group with Radcliffe's guys?
I don't believe it's with Radcliffe himself. I think it's a redevelopment group of Old Trafford that consists of, like, government as well.
Okay.
But the thing, like, the more I think about it, the more actually I've come to the realization that the reason he's doing it is not to do with money. It's more to do with sort of a message in terms of, we all know that United did need to trim fat. Like, how many roles have they made redundant at this point? And, like, if that doesn't change the day to day, you got to ask yourself, what were they actually doing? But I think the big thing when it comes to that is, I think he's trying to make it an environment where you don't get the luxuries anymore that they once did, that made them people hold on to their positions. And it's not up to me to say whether he's going about it the right or wrong way, but I do think that's the way he's going about it.
Do you think that this is now going to be reflected in the transfers going forward? Like, from the summer, that United fans should expect that players be the newer players, as the Deadwood is shifted off, that they're going to be on probably less wages and ultimately relatively less transfer fees, that they're going to be looking for kind of better deals.
Well, they're going to have to sell to buy, and Radcliffe's made that pretty apparent. But I do. Let's face it. It's kind of the opposite of, when Arsenal need a striker, so every striker now is going to be 30 million more. United, or clubs are aware United need to sell a lot of players, so those fees are going to be dramatically lower than they would have been for another team.
But what I mean more so is like, say, Benjamin Sesko becomes available, and Man United fans have to, under Ratcliffe, do Man United fans have to now completely discount players like that because he's not going to be willing to spend the money? Because you can't do it behind the scenes, have that level of frugality, and not replicate it on the playing side as well.
I disagree. I don't think it's going to change our transfer dealings in any way. Like, if you look at January, we spent 30 million on a left back that has been good in Serie A, but he's been relatively on the quieter side. So like that's a big fee to me for what we bought in terms of that. So do I think it will change going forward? Personally, no.
Do you think you're going to see a lot more 30 millions instead of like a 60, 70, 80 though? Like, would you see two coming,
Possibly,
whereas previously you would have seen one?
I
but
think yes, because you're gonna be hamstrung in how much wages you can give. So therefore, you're not you might have the 80 million to buy your player, but you don't have the wage structure to fulfill the contract they'd want.
yeah, but I think United, like in terms of say like we bought Hoyland for what 72 million, which is mental at this point. By the way, my ad Cheeto Obi that came on the weekend versus Fulham, 18-year-old, had 3 shots on target. Hoyland had 3 all season in the Premier League.
Obi looks amazing.
He does, yeah.
Isn't he not part of your European squad because he wasn't
Yeah,
considered a senior player yet? Which is
yeah,
just
we scoped him from Arsenal before Christmas, I think,
Mm.
and like it's just madness to me that like when you look at the stats, it's like I think Hoyland's had 18 shots in the league this season. 18 shots. There's
yeah.
8 games that have gone by where he hasn't had a shot. And it's to me, it's like it's players like that we bought, say, for him for 72 million. It's like that's not a mistake that you can easily just wipe under the carpet.
Well, he's not someone you're going to be able to sell come the summer. Like, you have to figure out how to work with him in some capacity.
I don't know if we can work with him like with what I'm seeing. To be honest, I think the best play is try and scalp him back to Serie A and try and get some fee because he was performing before he came.
What did you make of the result though at the weekend? Were you disappointed with it? Like, obviously Fulham have been doing well this year. Going to penalties is not great.
To be honest, what I took from that game was Roy Keane came across as a bit of a knob on the overlap. In terms of like without Bruno Fernandes, we're relegated. Like I'll say that right now. If we did not have Bruno Fernandes, we would be relegated this season.
I think you've spent too long in the doldrums, and for
I
when
genuinely have.
when you've many years of being down that neck of the woods, you'll start to get used to it and see the bigger picture. I don't think you're in that much of a terror.
I genuinely think we would be relegated this season with Bruno. The amount of points he's single-handedly saved for us in the Premier League. Like we cannot score goals. We cannot stop conceding goals. So like our only outlet to score the goals is Bruno currently.
I don't know. I'd be closer to Keane's opinion on Bruno. And I've always maintained that I've never liked his attitude. I don't like how he goes on.
Yeah, you were even saying that last week. Yeah,
he like I've been saying it for a year. Just even to watch him, his face annoys me. He just has that moaningness about him, and I think that this season aside, he's never really been one that you can count on when the going gets tough. I think if you used to be in a better position with a worse player that was more inspirational.
I totally disagree. Like he single-handedly is saving us points on the pitch, like with
No,
goals.
but if you had like a Roy Keane or a John Terry type, that one of them leaders of men that can pull better out of other players, you wouldn't be as reliant on one player.
well, that's one thing we've been saying for as long as the pod's been going is that, look, it's not just Man United. I'm not trying to just dig at them. There's plenty of teams in the Premier League that are lacking the leaders of even 5 years ago. I do think it's players are different. It's a new caliber of player. That's a new life experiences around being a player. And I don't think with the wages that come with it, I don't know if that kind of fight is still around. There's versions of it, but I don't think you see people like that at that level anyway.
You could have Muhammad Ali as captain, as inspirational as you want, and he's still not pulling anything out of that load of shite. Like I'm just so disappointed with what I'm saying right now, and I think a lot of players are underperforming rather than it being a team issue. If that makes sense.
We're looking at it is funny. We're looking at, is Amarim the guy? And I read recently that if you are to get rid of him in the summer, it's 12 million quid because his contract's pretty bulletproof that he gets a complete payout of his contract. So like leaving out, say if you could get that number was 1 million. Do you want him in the dugout next year?
Um, to be honest, I haven't had that. I haven't thought about that yet, just purely because like of how bad it is. I don't think it's his fault. You know what I
You're
mean?
weeping at the fire in front of you rather than thinking too far into the
Yeah,
future.
genuinely, I'm not even thinking to summer yet. Like, and that's the scary thing. Um, do I think he deserves to go? No. Do I think that it could get to the point where it's too damaged to save? There's still a long way to go in this season, and it's been very long. So I think he's walking a tightrope now between the club getting rid of him and him staying.
We've all kind of said where we stand on this topic, but do you think it's time to abandon this whole I play one formation, that's the structure, that's how we're always going to play as long as I'm here?
Hmm. Um, no, I think managers need to stick to the philosophies. Like, I think that's the reason why you hire managers, but due to how they play football, what their philosophy is, and I think forcing a manager out of their comfort zone because it's not working due to the players that they have at their disposal, I think it's just you're on the highway to nothing.
Well, I suppose where I'm going with this is someone almost has to go because, and I don't think Amarim's going anywhere. But if he's struggling this badly, it's either the manager's fault or the team that brought him in. And the team that brought him in evidently knew the players that they had at their disposal and didn't have the foresight to see that those players couldn't work in the system of this new manager. So, like, is it a director of football has to take a hit? Like, I'm not looking for someone's scalp here, but you know what I mean. Like, it's
Oh,
getting to a point that someone has to be. Not everyone's right in this
Well, that
system.
scalp is
hey,
already gone.
our director of football already took the hit, mate.
But he didn't even want Amram. He wasn't even on his list.
Well, is this yet again like a director type figure brought in, allowed leave because he didn't have the right opinions and has kind of seemed to be proven correct? Like, look at Ralph. Ralph, with all the players that he had apparently suggested and all the ideas that he have retrospectively look to be the right ones, and Ashworth on Amarin, well, maybe they should have actually listened to the man that they spent many millions and many months waiting for.
I saw Ashworth now in the cricket game. He's taken on a director role in, I believe, Surrey. But it'll be interesting that he's completely gone out of the sport. I doubt that's anything to do with a non-compete. I think it's just personal interest, probably.
Plus, there's always been that kind of crossover between football and cricket. I remember Len Shackleton, the crown prince of football for Sunderland back in the day. He used to play cricket on a county level. Now this is 1950s, but so I don't personally remember it. The other team, obviously, that was in the cup, Connor, was yourselves. How did it work out for you?
Just as good as it did for United. It just really wasn't our day. Eddie Howe's come out and said that our squad depth isn't really there. It's something I have talked about on the pod at length. I also don't think it's just that. I think there is a couple of times this season, however good we're playing, that I think mentally we're letting things slip. We saw it recently where 4-1 up, finished 4-3, leaking goals, silly kind of mental errors. So I think there's a little bit of work to do for the tune in terms of mentality of the team, as well as developing the team. I think the biggest most sickening part of that game for me was the Anthony Gordon foul. I just don't know what
What
he
was
was
that
thinking.
about?
I just don't know what he was thinking, man. I really don't. Like it was so unnecessary. And look, I mean, the comparisons over the last couple of days have been, well, Van Dijk didn't get sent off when he absolutely sculled Gordon, but that's neither here nor there. You know, there's two sides of this. A, why is Gordon
Wrongs don't make
doing
it
it?
right.
Yeah, why is Gordon doing this anyway? Like it is absolutely a red card. You know, the club were like, "We'll appeal this. Good luck and good night." That's him gone for the Carabao Cup final. In general, why would you make that foul ahead of a cup final where it's the first time in nearly 70 years? Really, why would you do that? And I know he's young, but I just don't bloody understand it.
When you look at how he left Everton, and when you look at the likes of this, he has that rogue streak in him that, like, I wonder what by the time he turns 30 and his legs start to go, will he actually have the mentality to kind of keep up upper Premier League teams' pace? Because he seems to allow things to get in on him in a way that
He
isn't.
sees red. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like literally in this case.
And like you know, again, it's something we've talked about on the pod when Gordon came into the fold. How he left Everton really bothered me. I don't like seeing that. You know, whatever your job in the world, you always try leaving the best places, but in the best circumstance. But you know, I think just a case of down in tools at a club that brought you through is simply unacceptable. And like that was always something that I think for me was a black mark that was a while before I warmed to. But yeah, again, it comes back to the mentality. You know, it. Are we arrogant in the fact that we think we're going to breeze through games? And like, let's call a spade a spade. We may be doing well, but we are not good enough to be playing arrogant football. You know.
Nate, there was a certain beauty to Brighton's scores against Newcastle. Yakuba Minta, who obviously had come through at Newcastle, and we had heard from Johnny McKinstry about his amazing talents, and a man that me and you know well, Danny Welbeck, who made a comment about always being a Mackham. Like it was
That
a
really rubbed me wrong. I cannot explain how angry I was when I saw that. Like, I don't care that he supports Sunderland, but just leave it a week, mate, please.
Yeah,
gotta love Welbs.
oh, he's a good one. He probably could still be playing for United to this day.
Cracking finish, though, have to
But
say.
yeah, Brighton are a weird one this season. They're either really on it or they're really off it. It's like there is no middle ground, it seems. And yeah, they were just a better side against Newcastle. Gordon gave like that red was so silly in my opinion. It's like I'd be fining him month's wages for that.
Well,
Genuinely.
there's no way you see that and go anything other than red. Like, it's not even like, you know, a tactical red where you live in the grey area. That is just stonewall red card. It's
Oh yeah,
mental.
and the club saying that they're going to appeal it or whatever. To me that's like stupid because you're just giving him a way out of his terrible decision. He needs to own up and take responsibility for it. And ultimately, you know, you never know what can happen in a cup final, and that could be the thing that costs them.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, look, we're going into that against arguably the best team in Europe. He is one of our top three players. It like at the already I really don't want to be right with this, but I think we're going to get absolutely pumped. But when we lose resources like that, it doesn't bloody help.
Like, if you don't win the cup, and if you miss out on Champions League, is there going to be pressure on Eddie Howe? I don't think there probably should have been because I think it's a pretty successful overall year. But with the ownership, do you think there's going to be pressure on him?
It's hard to say because, you know, look, I'll own up to it. Maybe, I don't know, 10 eps ago, I was questioning whether he was the man to take us to the next level. I mean, I think the Saudi investment fund have slightly taken their eye off the ball, pardon the pun, at the moment. So I don't know if they particularly, not care is the wrong word, but I don't know if it's problem number one for them, shall we say. I think he's enough cash in the bank this season. As long as we don't completely implode before the end of the year, I think he'll be in the dugout next year. But I do think next year is last chance saloon for him. Look, he's brought, like I've said a million times, we're victims of our own success in this way, and so is he. He has brought us way quicker towards our goal than we expected. So when those new levels have been raised, it's an unfair comparison. So yeah, I think he deserves to carry on into next year. I don't know about you guys.
All right, lads. I'm gonna say something mad again. All right, it's
If
like,
you call him Gareth Southgate, I'm hopping off.
and I could be eating humble pie next week, but I think Newcastle are going nowhere currently. I think, and that's mad to say when they're in the League Cup final. But let me continue. Is I think that they're still in that mindset of when they got taken over. Like, I think they need a new manager in quickly to kickstart that next phase and get everyone motivated and moving in a new direction. And I don't see personally myself that relationship good for either Eddie Howe or Newcastle that they're in now, because I think you're just sort of waiting for the inevitable to happen. That's my
I
opinion.
don't think you're wrong, and it's a fair point. You know, it's just one of those. I think it's slightly more heart and head in my side of the fence, in the fact that he has done a lot for the club. And I look, football's a cutthroat business, and you need to think of the club and not like who's been great to us if you're really cold about it. So look, I think you're right, and I think you'll be proven right. I think like you said, it's a matter of time. But then again, if he wins a trophy, Christ, like you won't be able to push him out, you know.
But it's not a trophy that's going to attract any bigger players for you to push on for a Champions League
No, it's not. But
place. So
yeah,
it's a trophy for the sake of a trophy. Like at least Ten Hag, when he was winning trophies, there was an element of, okay, well, it's Europa League, or
yeah.
like that. Like this is something to actually talk about. And
Like,
that didn't save him.
are we all on the same page with Newcastle? Is they need to sign, like, and I hate to use Jose because he's linked before, but they need to sign a name like Jose, in my opinion.
Well,
Get
yeah.
one or two high profile players in. And I'm not talking about the best players. I'm talking like two or three players with real stature in the game, like respected. And I think that's when you'll see the level up, and you'll see people actively want to go to Newcastle, and it head in the right direction, in my opinion.
I think so, and I think it's both from an optics perspective of big names like that, from a player point of view and a managerial point of view, but also raising the standards. And look, Newcastle are a big club, but in terms of the levels of achievement, we are not a big club, and we need players and managers who have been there to bring the club up to the next notch. And Jose, like we've said before, he's a short-term manager. Is he the guy? I don't know. Newcastle is, although like we're playing good football. It's not the easiest market to get people up to. It's bloody cold. It's bloody wet. Our facilities aren't incredible, but our fan base is what pulls people up there. I don't know, Killian. What are you saying? Do
Like
you think we need like an Italian savant of a manager to come in and change us up?
I do think you need somebody that has a little bit more of a tactical nous. Like I think if he's had a little bit more of an identity, something that you can kind of go, okay, that's the Newcastle way. As much as that pains me to say, but like if he's had like a Nagelsmann, somebody like that, is enough of a name that makes you go, oh, but has enough of a playing style that players can buy into. Because that's one of the things. Like we've mentioned this before, years ago when Ellis Short owned Sunderland, we were struggling to get kind of bigger name players. The biggest name player that we can get was Darren Bent, which was an
It
amazing
was
signing
big at
for
the
us.
time, yeah.
He was big at the time, but he was also unwanted pretty much at Tottenham. They were
Yeah.
very happy for him to go because they had about 47 strikers on the Harry Redknapp. Let's not forget Roman Pavlyuchenko. There's a name for you. And there was very, very, very serious consideration given to having a London training ground. So the
I
players
remember you
live
saying
in
this,
London
yeah.
and then travel up to Sunderland for games, which thankfully didn't happen. But again, that level of attractiveness isn't there in the general area of Newcastle or
Yeah, the
Sunderland or the
Northeast just
general
isn't.
Northeast.
It's not London. It's not anything
No,
like
so
it.
but if you had a managerial name or a style of football that made the player kind of go, oh, if I go here, this is actually going to be good for me, either here or after I leave here, this is going to be good for me. And I think you could box a little bit more clever. And I think if you use Paul Mitchell now, like you did well when you had Ashworth and you kind of gave him the proverbial key to the kingdom, and I think you need to do the same with Mitchell. And Mitchell has a lot more experience on the continent with Monaco and Leipzig, and allow him to use them contacts and that level of knowledge and that scouting frame that I'm sure he's going to have built up over that time to kind of pick out a few players and a few staff members, because that's the other thing that we kind of like. Arsenal like to talk about their set piece coach or whatever, and same with Liverpool and Aston Villa. Um, uh, you need to have a few kind of, if you're not going to have the big name manager or a big name manager, having very well thought of within industry staff can help. And I think if you can get some of them players and kind of go, listen, we're not going to win the Premier League this year or next year or the year after, but right now you're on the cusp of being great, and we can get you there.
I
In
think
the team that you're not there, the team that you're at now, you're not going to reach that. You could be very good, but we can guarantee you'll be great and you'll be challenging and you will be seen. And I think if you can get that little niche, then you have a really bright future ahead, and keeping within our beloved financial rules.
I'm trying so hard to like navigate not talking about FFP or PSR. It's banned this week, boys.
We can go again.
No, we are not going again. I think you're right with kind of the backroom staff and the type of manager we need. And I'm not saying this person would come to Newcastle. There's no reason, but like someone like a Diego Simeone, we need someone who is full siege mentality of it's us against the world. You're one of my boys. Like kind of a Duffer, a Mourinho type, that kind of.
Duff would be a very romantic move.
I mean, look,
Maybe
it's
so.
way too big for him. Like, I mean, maybe down the line some point. I mean,
When
you're,
you're
te-
relegated.
you're telling me you'd want to be doing 6 press conferences a week in front of English media? I do not think so. Like as a manager, I think he's brilliant. I love the way he treats his players and kind of.
But just having the former player in it would be
Yeah.
very romantic, especially considering the last time he was there, he was scoring an OG to get you relegated under Alan Shearer.
That man's knees were just kaput at that point.
Had a very good career at Fulham after he though. Got to Europa League final.
We don't talk about that.
So I think we're all generally in agreement that like yous are nearly there.
Yeah.
And it
Could go either way, though. It could really go either way.
But I think he's need a ballsy move either way. Like I would rather see you live and die by a ballsy move and kind of going, we went for it, than kind of having this petering out under the English manager now.
Yeah, Newcastle are boring nowadays. That's all I'm gonna say.
Lads, I will take boring. Like the amount of years of going, I just want to stay up. I just want to stay up. Jesus, anywhere from like 12th up is party time at this point.
Yeah, like I still think they're far away. Like that's the thing is, I don't see him making the moves. That's the big thing. I don't see it happening. I don't see he's being proactive with it because there's nothing to suggest that he's are going to be because he's been with his manager for so long.
I'm just going to put
losing
out
your
there.
CEO as well, aren't you?
Yes, down to medical circumstances.
But again, it's another kind of big hole after losing Ashworth last year.
There's a lot of
Nick
C-suite
Flynn.
movement, and even with the ownership group changing as well.
Is that kind of holding you back where they're kind of going, well, it's better to have a steady hand and a product that we know rather than kind of taking the chance and a bit of a leap and actually potentially getting to the next step?
I think so. I think it's a mix of things, lads. To be honest with you, there's no seemingly there's no kind of long-term plan that I can see. We don't have a football style. We've got an ownership group that's changing, a foreign ownership group that it's unclear how invested they are long-term. I think it's a case of they were setting up the commercial opportunities, like bringing Adidas back into the fold. And yeah, I know we're kind of flirting with PSO chat here, but I think they're trying to sort out the commercial side of the house first, and then build from there. But to be honest, lads, I do not want to get Champions League this season. I know that sounds insane, and I really want to be in the Champions League because I love seeing Newcastle in the Champions League, but it did not help our situation the last time, and I don't think our squad depth is there, and like I said, mentality-wise, we are not at the races, so I don't think we're ready for another year of that.
Well, squad depth wise, you aren't, considering you're still so dependent on Isak. But in other news that we wanted to touch on, a former international, an Irish international, Nate, a former Sunderland player, has been in the news. Can you tell us why?
He started having a go at anyone and everyone. Seems
This is Ian Harte, by the way.
Yeah, Ian Harte. Basically called the Irish League, quote unquote, rubbish. And yeah, everyone's just unloaded back at him. He's had a go at Kenny. Kenny's had a go back at him. Eamon Dunphy's getting in the ring now.
Stephen Bradley, Damien Duff. It's a big pile.
Let's go back to the beginning of this, just for anybody that hasn't heard about this. Connor, Ian Harte basically accused the Irish leagues of holding players back by holding on to them too tightly and trying to charge them too much, despite the fact that you get better fees out of the Icelandic league for your players than you do in anywhere in Ireland.
Yeah, the crux of his argument was, look, I do think he's had an unfair amount of pile-on. I don't think he was looking for headlines. It was a bit of a throwaway comment, but his comment was around the fact that the transfer fees for Irish or players in the League of Ireland is hamstringing them in the fact that English clubs aren't willing to pay them, and therefore they're unable to get a move to the UK. I think I do think, look, he was operating as an agent for multiple players across the league, and I think that may be coming from some potential deals that got burned for him, and thus burnt commissions, and it might be a more personal thing than a actual belief.
I think we can all understand the frustration, especially with Brexit and stuff, but let's not blame a league for external things. But Nate, does he have a point? Is the league trying to charge too much for players? I personally don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. Just on what Connor said there, I think he definitely was looking for headlines because he went for everybody. Also references like other stuff as well. But in terms of the fees, I think the fees are fine currently. Like I think we need to aim to look upwards. I think Brexit's an issue. I think that will ultimately stunt how much money we're gonna get now and in the future. But yeah, I think to go like, oh, you've got these good players and we're asking for too much. I think that's a ridiculous comment in my opinion.
Well, it's like, I think Stephen Bradley summed it up best. He was like, I'll just give Duffer a call and we'll both agree to give away our best players for free. Like, I mean, what's Harte expecting? Like, I mean, we only recently saw the first £1 million transfer, or €1 million. It was €1 million or £1 million. It was definitely a million of a currency. And we've had a couple of 100,000s here and there, but like, it's not too long ago that Coleman was 60k. You know what I mean? Like, clubs have to make the return on investment and secure their financial future as well.
I would go a little bit further than both of you, and I'd say that not only do I disagree with him, I think he's flat out wrong. I think the league needs to be bringing in minimum fees. I think there needs to be a set minimum fee that, like, the club isn't forced to accept anything below.
How would you structure that, though, of interest?
So, like, in Spain, they have minimum release fees, and every contract has to have one. And I think
so. It's per player, or as in like
it's on every player. So every contract,
it's specific. It's like the same. Like it's a minimum across the league for any player, or it's different case scenario.
They each have different ones.
Okay,
like
they have different ones. So like Benzema at one stage had €1 billion one.
Yeah, you always see the big
your
ones.
Your upper one can go. But like, if we set it that like every player has let's not go crazy, because like obviously not every player is going to command massive fees, and you don't want a re-adjudicating of the Bosmans kind of thing. But if you had like a 60k minimum for outside of the league transfers and a 10k within the league.
So
That, like,
regardless of
below
who
that,
regardless of who the player is, it's got to be above
that there's gonna
60k.
if you're trying if a team from outside of Ireland is trying to sign them, but it doesn't have to be that. That's the minimum that the club can go. No, well, we want more than that. And if you want to activate that clause, it's 60k. And then between the player and the team, that they can negotiate that to be higher. So like they could, like me, I'm signing you, Connor, and we're saying, okay, the league minimum is 60, but I want to guarantee 500,000 out of you. And you go, okay, well, I know I'm going to be worth 2 million, so I'll agree to that. Or no, actually, that doesn't suit me. Let's make it 300k. But that there's a league minimum, so that we're not going to see these Seamus Coleman ones where you're accepting this fee because, I don't know if I'm going to get it again. Like,
Yeah.
the players in the league is better than that, and by upping our negotiation power, I think as a league internally we can do that. And if you want to accept lower than that, you can. But that you can turn around to a team and go, no, we have a minimum fee. If you wanted to sign him,
So it basically gives them a
you
leg
want
to
to pay
stand
40.
on.
Yeah, you want to pay 40. We want 60. The minimum fee is 60, so you can pay the 60. Or they can turn around and go, well, we actually want 70, but the minimum fee is 60 that has been agreed. So you're actually getting them a 10 grand less than we want to.
But then,
Averaged across all your transfers, you'd be in a better stead.
if you're Ian Harte, though, like playing devil's advocate where he's coming from, is that unfair? Say if you're a 16-year-old kid has the same release fee as, I don't know, a 28-year-old. Should it be adapted for, I suppose, years of experience or different factors? Because I think a blanket rate, I don't know if that.
In football, years of experience actually puts your price down, because like the potential and what you might be actually increases more. And just for let's give you a little bit of background here on Ian Harte. Ian Harte represented Jack Clarke, and for the whole time that he was at Sunderland, bearing in mind that Sunderland allowed Jack Clarke to reinvent himself. So Jack Clarke was very good talent at Leeds, went to Tottenham, didn't work out. Nobody particularly wanted him. He went on loan to Sunderland. Sunderland signed him, became this amazing player. And for the whole time he was at Sunderland, Ian Harte was in his ear going, you are better than this. You deserve better than this. You should be getting higher. And was lauding him out at every opportunity that he could, until he finally got a move. And he got it to Ipswich, and he spent most of the year on the bench. This is a guy that's more business and money orientated than he is football. Let's just put that out there.
Well, and look, that's not an attack on him. That's the industry he is in for the most part. Any agent or intermediary that's how they make their bag.
Well, like, agents should have the best interest of players in heart, and whether that's the right move for him, who knows? But I think you also then have to go back and look at the comments and then go, he's clearly coming at it from a biased opinion, as if he represents players, wants more money for players. He is then going to get more commission. So, like,
he's trying to protect his own position, and the league, I think, should be doing things to protect their position and their team's positions and give them a little bit more negotiating power, because ultimately when agents are representing multiple players, they can then have a little bit more influence over teams than they realistically should have.
A la Raiola, Mendes,
exactly.
Any of the super agents.
Exactly. And like, there's another thing as well that we must mention, Nate. Ian Harte's not an agent, despite the fact that he says he is.
Indeed, yeah. He's a scout?
Officially, he's a scout for an agency.
So
because
would he be a football consultant then? Would he?
No, so technically he's a scout. Like, he's a scout like for a team, but he's a scout for an agency where they go out. He goes out and scouts players and says, "Oh, we should be signing him because
it's talent identification, basically."
Yeah. But he has been masquerading without license as an agent, and up until recently had it even as his LinkedIn profile.
You would wonder if that agency, I think it's SMI was his agency, sports marketing,
one of the letter ones.
Yeah, like, you'd wonder, are they going to have, not, Jesus, sanctions sounds a bit insane, but surely there's fines coming their way.
Like, there is a FIFA, like, You have
It's an
to be
exam, isn't it?
certified, yeah,
Yeah.
to
Or
become an agent.
Like at a time when agents are trying to clean up their act and kind of be seen to be a little bit more legit, this within Ireland, the Irish sense anyway, is going to put question marks over it, and it should put question marks into the minds of young players and their parents, kind of going, we need to be double checking this because apparently international caps is not something you can trust anymore.
Well, again, I feel like it's my weekly Glennon talks about the NFL segment, but one thing that is impressive about the NFL or American sports in general, to be a qualified agent, you need to have a law degree. Um, so like there's parameters set in place to at least have people that can contractually or know contracts back to front and help their players, and it's not just a situation like that where it's a talent identification person moonlighting as an agent.
Well, see, I think the way football is getting around it at the minute is that you're signing them to the agency, but so whoever is signing the final contract is the agent, and the person that's dealing with the player one on one isn't
And how the
necessarily.
fees are divvy out is for them to decide.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the issue where, like, as much as they're trying to clean it up, and there seems to be minimum standards, like you're saying with the NFL, it's more about how the companies are working is part of the issue. And look, we've seen issues in the past. Let's for a Premier League example, Tevez and Mascherano of multiple ownerships and stuff, and we don't want to get to a stage with agents where you are questioning who's taking every piece of the pie, but you also need to have a level of player protection in mind as well, that maybe the agencies as a whole need to be getting licensed and not just individuals.
Well, yeah, it's like it's an easy fix if the federations and FIFA and UEFA want to actually fix it. Like, you know, I hate to like go off topic, but say like a taxi, like you have like there's a board that gives out a license and you get the license. It's same for a law degree, you get your bar license. It's like that's
Well,
how it
to
should
actually
be
use
done,
your
in my opinion.
taxi analogy at the minute, there's the car is getting the license, and what's
Well,
happening right now is nobody's questioning who's driving it.
is it a case though where like if they were open about it, is there anything wrong if it was fully transparent? Of say Nate's the qualified agent, uh, myself and yourself, Killian, are talent identification people for Nate. We find him, yeah, we're in his ear and we're helping him. But when it comes to anything contract related or finance related, Nate takes care of it. If everyone knows that's the case, do we think that's okay?
I think the issue is if you're saying you're an agent. Like
That's what I'm saying. Like if he was open and was like, I just find the players, and yeah, I might give him a bit of advice here and there, but I think it's the moonlighting as something he isn't is where it gets dirty, really.
In theory, I think it would be okay if you had, like, say, if Ian Harte was player liaison and he was there as an advisor
Like a
with the
manager,
teams,
effectively.
like an agent, sort of, but without being the legal agent, kind of being, I am your one-to-one guy. I'm not going to give you the legal advice, but I'll tell you what I think, and here's what our agent has said. But it's just, that's just way too open for people to be able to take advantage of. And like, we see it, and part of the reason why there's meant to be these kind of things in places, we see it especially with like Africa, the amount of scams that come out of players being brought over to Europe by these so-called agents or anything. Like, there's a reason why it needs to be regulated, and when somebody in such a high profile position, both in media and in kind of football heritage terms, is not even playing within the rules, I don't know. It's just so muddy and dirty, and you would expect better from somebody like Ian Hart.
Well, especially because I mean, look, I haven't done the exam, so I can't exactly speak to it, but I'm guessing it's not the hardest thing to pass. You know, what I mean, it's similar to a football coach lying about having football coaching licenses and then getting found out. You know what I mean? Like I don't want this to end a career for him. You know, it's not like he's done anything wrong. It's just a bit murky.
Just go get trained.
Yeah.
Go get trained.
well, I think the thing is like say he was an actual agent and he was going on media sites and doing punditry and stuff. Is like, I suppose it doesn't matter because he was saying it, but like, I think it opens up the line as like, where is the actual conflict of interest, and how how willing are we to get to that line that we're exploring? You know what I mean? In terms of people need to know that there's a conflict of interest in these stuff.
Yeah, when he's commentating on one of his players and saying how great they are, and potentially somebody believes that and inflates their fee for the next 6 months.
Well, we've
Like
we've,
like
we've,
that,
we've talked
that's
about that
mentally an
before.
issue.
You
Like
know,
like it's, and that's why these licenses, in my opinion, need to become more stricter and harder to get. Is these conflict of interest can cause price hikes, can cause other issues. It's like we as the public and people that watch the sport, we need to know this stuff.
but we've seen it before. I think we talked about it not too long ago. Where was it? Wayne Rooney was doing punditry and waxing lyrical about some player that it then transpired has the same agent as him or is within the same agency, and
Ramsdale.
that was it. That was the exact one. Yeah. So like it isn't new, and again, is it just, well, look, the knowledge is out there. It's up to you to find it. Do we have to be told these things?
I'm just so glad we can all agree that rules make football better. Anyway,
Oh, you
Ah,
madman!
yeah,
Don't
before we finish,
don't do this.
uh, we have got some comments on social from whoever listens or has just seen our social clips, and those that have only seen our social clips probably aren't even listening to this, but hopefully the yous have. So on TikTok, talking about Liverpool have lost one match. Many as well call this the Excusimer League. Liverpool won the league well before the COVID restriction. Technically, City won the COVID league. Obviously, this is in relation to kind of like, is this a good Liverpool team or just a very bad run for second, that there wasn't that much competition against them? What do you think? Are you still of the opinion that this is kind of a weaker Premier League, or have
this did.
Liverpool been deserved winners this time around?
Oh, I think the level of football this year has been atrocious. Like generally,
We're
that's
not just talking about United here, Nate.
no, like across the league. Like I think I'd be sure to point out two or three overperformers. Like Nottingham Forest is one, but I think in terms of like the actual what we're getting as a product this season has been terrible. And let me make that clear: that's not Liverpool's fault. Um, so like that's not to knock against them, but I think we can all sit here and go, it's been a very poor Premier League season.
I completely agree with you, and on both points. Look, I've said many a time this season, Liverpool can only beat who's in front of them. But it has not been. You've got a United team that's poor. You've got a City team that's poor. Chelsea are still struggling. Arsenal are doing Arsenal things. So yeah, not a great year, but I think for still chapeau to Liverpool.
Lobby 1976 says, "Who actually cares what these clowns think?"
Oh well, we always
Well, clearly he does, but he's sat here listening to us. Like,
it
make up your mind, mate.
takes a lot of effort to make a comment. So we appreciate you spiking the algorithm for us and getting our content out there. So if anyone else wants to call us clowns, we'll play that horn again.
Camilo TB, our fan on Instagram. The only thing that can prevent Liverpool from winning the league, as cliche as it sounds, is Liverpool. At the minute, I don't see a single club in the Premier League that can keep up with them. I have concerns about about the system at times, and Arne's unwillingness to make minor updates or changes. But, question for you: of these first-year managers to win the Premier League, which is the most impressive? Mourinho 04-05, Ancelotti 09-10, Pellegrini 13-14, Conte 16-17, or presumably Slot 24-25?
Great question. Very
Really
very
good.
good
I've
question.
got my answer.
Go for it.
Mourinho 4-5.
Yeah, I'm trending that way as well. I'm not just bandwagoning. I think it was. Actually, no, you go first.
I think it kicked off Chelsea's dominance in that period, didn't it? Like, what he did with Porto, the season before, and then transitioning so seemingly into that Chelsea team and ultimately building it up to what it was. I think Yeah, I genuinely think it's been the best one. Like,
I think so as well, because I think that was peak competitiveness within the Premier League. You had a United dominance at that point. You had every team had a fantastic striker for the most part. Like, I'm not going to say everyone. I do think though, to give Arne his flowers, I do think it's top. He's in the top three. I think the only I mean, look, you could caveat in the fact that he was handed a great team by Klopp, but then you could also say to come in after Klopp was a big bloody thing to take on, and he's ran with it. But I don't know about you, Killian. I'm gonna be the same as our dear friend and say Jose.
I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm
Shock.
also going to say, I'm going to say that you are actually wrong as well. I think it was Ancelotti, because what you are forgetting, when Mourinho won the league, Arsenal had just won it the year before, and it was United the year before that. So there wasn't that period of dominance yet. Whereas Ancelotti won it when United won it 3 in a row. Ancelotti wins, and then United win it again, and then City, and then United, and then City. So like, Ancelotti was the one that actually turned around fortunes when the league had been walked upon by the end, coming towards the end of Alex Ferguson's tenure. So I think he gets a disservice because he was sacked in the second year.
I think you're downplaying Mourinho that he kicked off a dominant period. Like, I think that
I don't know.
I I
I think
think,
the overall league was a little bit more competitive, so there was more points up for grabs.
but I think that goes to his testament then, as the league was more competitive, and he took over that Chelsea team, won that league, and then started a dominant period.
No, but what I mean there is, like, your other opponents could, like, so say the Arsenals would lose against United, so that there was these opportunities for points to be lost. Whereas when Ancelotti won it, there was a little bit more of a runaway at that period. Like, yeah, they had 1-3 in the bounce, and some of them were closer than others, but it was like generally a foregone conclusion. And this was prime top four, so there was no question about who was going to be in the top four. It's about who was going to be in what order. So for Ancelotti to do it with a good Chelsea team, I will say, but like, this was after they had Scolari. Like, they'd gone through a period of
Was
not great.
Deco still there in that team? Because I know he was in the Scolari
Ooh.
team. Because
Yeah,
I remember him seeing him play, but like was it that era of Chelsea?
it,
Like,
yeah, like, it was like the top scorer that year was Drogba. Um, uh, Czech had the most clean sheets. Like, in that year, Chelsea
Terry,
bet Wigan.
Lampard, Cole, yeah,
Well, Chelsea bet Wigan 8-0 that year.
yeah.
Like,
What
it
was
was
run me
it
through the
was
list again there? So it was Jose, Ancelotti, Pellegrini.
Pellegrini, Conte, and Slot.
Conte wouldn't be up there for me personally.
He well, one thing I'd give him a bit of credit for in that was, like, the impact that 5 at the back system made across the league for that period of
Can
time.
I can I add to the Mourinho one that they won the league by 12 points last season, and they almost hit the 100 mark?
Yeah,
Oh, like, I'm not saying that
Like,
it wasn't
95
incredible.
points, like, in that period where, like, we're talking about a period in Premier League where literally any team could beat any team, in
yeah.
terms of, your lower league teams could, like, literally take points off you. Like, I think that stands more of a testament when you're hitting the 95s. And 2 or 3 years ago we were raving about how City and Liverpool, they keep getting such high point tallies, this and that. Like, Mourinho was doing it in 2005.
It was also that was the era of, like, there's not many teams now that you'd be like, oh, they're so and so's bogey team. Like, United going to West Ham was always a fucking war. Like there was this, I think Nate's right. For me, I just to pull off what he did, it won't be matched.
Like, one loss that season, like, you're looking at from 16th upwards, each team had 10 wins. Like, that's so competitive, you know what I mean? And I
Well,
think,
Ancelotti's Chelsea team had scored the most goals in a season for the first time since the 60s, with 103.
I have to say that's the best question we've been asked
Yeah,
at any episode. Fantastic question.
so shout out Camilo, and shout out to anybody that has listened all the way to the end of this podcast.
damn, Middlesbrough came 7th in 2005. Fucking hell.
Yeah, but don't forget Middlesbrough had a
Charlton
European run.
11, Jesus.
Middlesbrough had a European run.
It's grand, lads. I was 4 that year. It's grand.
Juninho Paulista. People forget. Also, they had Yak around then.
Yeah.
They also had Viduka and George Boateng, I want to say. Yeah, they had a strong team. It was Gareth Southgate still playing as a centre back for them at that stage? Can't remember. Yeah. We will do an episode one day where it's just us naming classic players just to scratch that little itch in my brain. Gentlemen, it's been fun being clowns with you. We'll chat to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Messi. Oh my goodness! Balotelli.